All right, people, good afternoon or good evening from here in Lagos, Nigeria. It is 4 p.m. I don't know what time it is over there, but thank you once again for joining this hangout. And I know the opportunity you guys have had in this during the summit. I know it's been exciting and explosive, I guess. I've been following the tweets and I can understand what you guys are feeling right now, and I know you're all ready and willing to go. So let me just start. Gigi, you're the lady, so as they say, as a gentleman, I'll say ladies first. Let me let you go first. I mean, it's been some days now, and I know you've learned so much from the summit, right? Oh yeah. So I mean, just state in few words, or just state as best as you can how you intend to promote good governance in your country, that's Botswana, I guess, and Africa at large. I mean, after your experience from this summit,
Okay.
I said, how do you intend to effect this change of silencing the guns and promoting good governance after the summit you had in Kenya, that's in your own home country of Botswana, as well as Africa at large?
Definitely. Thank you very much. One of the first things I intend to do is to ensure that when I go back to my country, I empower my fellow young people on all the great lessons that I've acquired during the past 3 days at this pre-forum on DG trends. First of all, to empower young people in my country about what is DG trends, what it represents, and all that it encompasses, and our contributions as young people, and how we can take part and engage in meaningful dialogue with our leaders in terms of holding them accountable for commitments they've made, in terms of achieving democracy, free elections, especially looking at that the fact that in Botswana next month we are going to be going to elections, and we have a serious problem with voter apathy. And I want to empower them that, because the biggest problem we currently have in Africa is that of young people who are ignorant, who lack information that could help us in infusing and imparting the kind of change and development we want to see in our continent. So I believe in sharing leader and activist and advocate to young people. And then the last bit of it is that realizing the demographic weight of us as young people in Africa, we account to about between 60 and 70% of the population of Africa. They say they strengthen numbers, and as young people, it's high time we use that demographic weight as power to be able to influence the kind of change that we want. And also, we've been really advantage the young people of this generation because we have modern and advanced technology that makes it easier for information dissemination, for empowerment, for lobbying, advocacy purposes. It's just that we need to use the resources available to us as young people of this generation to best work for us and our advocacy, and ensuring that we get the change that we want to see in our respective countries and in the continent at large.
Oh, all right, Gigi, well said. So let me just move now, Ibrahim. Let me come to you. I didn't get which country are you from?
I'm Nigerian actually.
Oh, awesome. So great. You're from Nigeria. And I mean, I guess you have a higher or a greater challenge than Gigi. Nigeria is quite pluralized and to an extent polarized as well. How do you intend to do same thing, Gigi just spoke about in your native country of Nigeria?
At the moment, I work at the African Union Commission, and I actually play the lead role in ensuring that we have young people play a more pivotal role in the work that we do at the Department of Political Affairs, particularly on the African governance architecture, on the work that we do in strengthening and improving democratic governance on the continent. One of the ways that we have been doing that, Botswana, Ethiopia, Egypt, or Algeria, is that we ensure that we provide the young people the platform to be able to improve and influence and impact on policy making at the regional and continental level. One of the ways to do that is to ensure that we provide to them the tools, particularly instruments that the African heads of state in their various summits over the last 50 years have signed on to as commitment to improving democracy on the continent. So all these instruments, whether they are the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, the African Charter on the Principles and Values of Public Service, we put this information at the fingertips of young people so that they can be able to make the right demand on their government in their respective countries. So for us, the DigiTrends is one of the ways that we think we can bring non-state actors into the open field of policy making at the continental level. And we intend to do this working with young people at several levels, whether it's at the national, the regional, and of course at the continental level. So this is one of our continental initiatives, and we expect that participants, which we have drawn from over 40 countries all over the continent, are able to go back home more informed and use their mobilization capacity as heads of organizations in their respective countries to impact the work that they do.
All right, Ibrahim, thank you for your contribution there. Let me come to you, Japhet Momodjoa. Um, just to pick a line or to pick a cue from what Ibrahim just said, he spoke about charters and let me even add agreements, acts, and all this stuff. But if you look at the environment that we have, would you say they respect charters that are being entered into by AU members? And if they do, how soon do you see young Africans silencing this big guns, so to speak?
I don't think they do as much as they should, but the fact that these agreements are there are kind of beginning to get something started. Sometimes they have to flout this is just for political reasons or for some other reasons. How can young people be directly involved? I think we've started already by having this conversation. We reached over 42, apart from the fact that we have people from about over 40 countries here physically in Kenya. We also reached over 42 people via social media, 5 continents. We cannot make change happen without conversations. So young people have started these conversations. Eventually, we would have to commit to some of the things that have to do with what we have to do as young people, which of course include being responsible for what we do, what we say, being consciously Pan-African, engaging other young people who do not know anything about these conversations, increasing the relationships between amongst us as young people in individual countries and then inter-country relationships, because if people do not have relationships, tribal relationships, they tend to have disagreements that arise from not interacting. So that's what we're doing. But the first things first, we're having the conversation, and I think from the conversation we can begin to commit to doing actionable points that we agree on and that we would eventually also agree on as time goes on.
All right, Japhet, let me just hold you down again. If speaking about young people, their vision now, talking about their vision, values, their norms, of young African people, how do you see them affecting this change? I mean, vis-a-vis the institutional framework that we have, in Africa.
When we say young people, it's just a way for us to be able to classify a population. But let's not forget that this is not a mono reality. Young people, there are young people that are doctors, there are young people that are sex workers, there are young people that are lawyers. We have different realities. There are young people that are responsible, there are young people that are irresponsible. But to make change happen in this population, we have to start with the parts that we can control. The parts that we can control are the responsible ones, are the ones that are committed to change, are the ones that see beyond their daily needs, are the ones that are privileged enough to have been to school, privileged enough to know what the issues are. If we don't deal with the ones that we can control, we would have no business even being able to influence the ones that we cannot control. So we start with these ones and then eventually hope that the message, the activities and the works that these other ones that we can control do get to inspire the change that we want amongst the ones that we have no control, that we don't have direct control over.
All right. So Gigi, do you agree with that? What's your take on this?
Yes, I absolutely agree with him when he says that it's very important that when you talk about issues that affect young people in our continent, we need to acknowledge that young people are not a homogeneous group. The young people who face different realities in their respective countries, who come from different backgrounds. But it's important to realize that youth priorities are a matter, and given that demographic weight in the continent, they should be at the center and at the heart of every development agenda that is being set. And also, just to add on to what he was saying earlier on about the human rights commitments and treaties that our countries and our leaders have committed themselves to. I'd say we've reached a point right now in the world where we have so many of these paperwork and there is less implementation, less enforcement, and less action. Perhaps now is the time when we call for action oriented initiatives. We call for the implementation and enforcement of these human rights treaties. Another element to look at this is that perhaps some leaders look at these human rights treaties and commitments and say that they are perhaps not binding to them to fulfill completely. And that is a point of advocacy for us as young people, to ensure that we advocate for these human rights commitments to be domesticated. Why? Because when they are domesticated and localized into laws and are enshrined in the statutes of our respective countries and constitutions, it will be easier for us as young people to hold our leaders accountable for achieving them. So it's important that beyond the signing and the ratification of these commitments, they are also domesticated to enable us to hold our countries accountable for them, and also for our leaders to ensure that they implement and enforce them at all levels.
All right, Gigi. Ibrahim, let me come to you now, and let me also take a cue from Gigi there. Talking about implementation, how far has the African Union Department of Political Affairs gone in trying to ensure and make sure that these agreements, charters, acts, and pacts are being implemented by AU members?
Thank you very much. For us at the Department of Political Affairs, one of the reasons why member states decided to establish the Pan-African architecture on governance 4 years ago was also the realization that we've made quite a progress from where we were coming from in the 1990s. But of course, what we have seen is that while elections seem to have become a norm, and even though we still have challenges with them, there are deeper democratic governance issues that we also need to address. And so one of the ways that the head of states thought that we could address this was to come up with a structure that allows us to begin to look more deeply at the issues of implementation on the ground. If you look at the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance, there is a reporting commitment that member states have made that every 2 years they would report on the administrative and legislative measures they have taken in ensuring that issues that have been highlighted in all the articles in that charter are domesticated and implemented in their state. One of the works that we are actually doing at the moment is also the development of a state reporting guideline for member states to report on what they have done so far since this charter came into force 2 years ago. And now that the state reporting guidelines has been done, we're consulting widely with member states, civil society groups, youth groups, and all organizations that we know who have responsibility for implementation to begin to tell us how they work together to report on the implementation. So, for example, in each country that is a state party to the charter, we have requested that all the state parties must ensure that the national focal committees must have young people, must have civil society, and women also playing a role. The idea for us is to ensure that we have a counterbalance between the reports that we get, of course, from state institutions, but also from non-state institutions. One of the ways that we are also trying to advocate for the implementation of this charter is what we're doing with GD Trends. Because if we don't put this information at the, if we don't make it available to non-state actors, they will not be able to make the right demands on the government in their respective states. So we're doing quite a number of things. We hope that even our partnership with the media and advocacy like this that we're doing would also help to bring attention to the issues of instruments that have been adopted, ratified, and signed, but oftentimes are not implemented by our member states. But we also consider that a lot has been done. It's just important for us to also highlight that the battle is not over. So we must intensify efforts at ensuring that member states implement the commitments they have made.
All right, Ibrahim, I must say that it's a laudable event, and I must say that you guys are doing a great job. But just like Japhet and Gigi said, they said talking about youths. Japhet made an elaboration of whom comprises of youths, in the African continent. Can you hear me?
It's going on and off.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
All right. Just like I was saying, I said Gigi and Japheth made, an elaboration of, or they broke down whom comprises of youths, so to speak now. And it is quite a large umbrella. The word youth, it's a big umbrella that, that covers a lot of groups and a lot of people. What measures is your department putting in place to see that you have a sizable number of people, trying to champion this cause?
No, I mean, for us, we're very, very clear about the composition of the youth group on the continent. The African Youth Charter, clearly states that young people are defined the young people who are between the ages of 18 and 35. But we also know that young people are not just male and female. We know that there can be young people with disabilities, young people who are out of school in the informal sector, vulnerable young people, those who probably have been orphaned by HIV/AIDS and all kinds of deadly diseases. So for us is to be sure that in every program that we do or every event that we do, we mainstream the needs and the perspectives of all these individuals in the work that we do. For example, this meeting that we just concluded about an hour ago, we ensured that we had representation from all the various vulnerable groups that you would think of, whether it's disabilities, whether it's young people who work with people living with HIV/AIDS, people who work even in the informal sector. We made very useful preparation to ensure that we are able to get this set of young people participate in the work that we do. But we are not also focusing on meetings, which of course will just bring quite a small number of people. We are also going into programming that ensures that we are able to reach informal sectors, whether they're in the marketplace or they're in the border parks, which we call the downfall parks in Nigeria, or even if they're federal riders and all that, is to ensure that our programming through the civil society organizations and youth groups that we work with, they are able to influence the work that they do on the ground through the information that we have provided them, and of course, with the information at their disposal from our end. So we try as much as possible to broaden the horizon of the work that we do beyond just the usual conference attendees and all of that. And if you see, even in the makeup of our participants, we ensure that we have young activists, we have academia, young researchers in universities and tertiary institutions across the continent, even young people who work in research institutes, quite a number of them across the continent, youth in media, youth in creative arts, because we believe that through all this means we'll be able to reach a wider audience beyond our traditional participants at various meetings.
All right, Ibrahim, thanks for that. Let me now move to you, Omodua. Talking about, getting these youths in the process, of changing, things as they are. This hashtag was flying sometime in Nigeria, 30% or nothing. No, well, I can see that smile, so I would understand you are well aware of that hashtag. How would you say that is actually helping in silencing the so-called guns? Or to what extent do you think that will help?
The hashtag 30% or nothing has nothing to do with stopping guns.
Okay.
The hashtag 30% or nothing is the agitation of members of young members of the People's Democratic Party to have more representation in their political party, and I think they have a right to make those agitations. Where I have issues with the hashtag is where they try to make that agitation look like it's about us young people. So it has nothing to do with silencing the guns. But if I have to connect it, then I'd say the fact that the young people can have these conversations is very, very positive. Because if people don't have the ability, if they don't have the platform to air their disagreements, to vent their voices, they would have to find other ways to express those things. And one of those other ways is guns. So anywhere people are able to, look, some leaders, for instance, say that young people are insulting them, they are cursing them. They should be appreciative that they are being cursed, because those curses could easily be bullets in their brains. Sometimes when you cannot talk, when you don't have an opportunity, a platform to express yourself conventionally, you go about it unconventionally, and blasting somebody's brains is unconventional. So it's a great thing that we can talk. It's a great thing that we're having these conversations, because it allows us to vent our voices the way rational people vent their voices. Where these things are not made to be possible, other ways are made to be possible. And human beings, when you don't allow them to go through one thing the conventional way, they always get to find their way. So I think it does help to reduce it helps the gun conversation, in that people are able to vent their voices, and so it means they don't have to go through venting their voices through other means, like killing people.
Oh yeah, hopefully, I hope we do maintain that conventional means of trying to, of course, trying to pass that. So let me come to you, Gigi. In Botswana, has there been any form of agitation to silence the guns, be it conventional or unconventional, just like Momojiwa just said now?
Yes, I believe that the whole world knows that I come from one of the most peaceful, democratic, and stable countries, not only in Africa but in the whole world, having the track record of never having a war in the country, or even being at war with any other country outside the borders. And one of the reasons why we have been able to achieve such peace and stability in Botswana is because we have had one of the oldest forms of democracy, which is in the form of the Khotla system. This is a cultural gathering where we highly believe that it is very important to solve disputes amicably through talking. In Botswana, we believe that there's absolutely never ever a reason for you to resort to violence under any circumstances. It's very important to talk through it. It's very important to even call a third party where the two of you are having a violent exchange of words or in anything like that. So we don't have even a background of fighting in my country, because we never even fought for our independence. We had the British protectorate, and then later on we were given independence from British colonial rule. Nevertheless, it doesn't mean that my country is perfect. It doesn't mean that it's smooth sailing. We do not have disagreements with the government. It does not mean that we have things that we question about the administration, the government, and so on and so forth. It doesn't mean that we don't have challenges where we feel our country or our government does not represent our needs or does not prioritize our needs and even respond to them accordingly as young people. One of the biggest challenges we have in Botswana is the representation of women and young people in positions of power, authority, and influence, particularly in the National Assembly, where we have less than 5 women, where we have, I think, 1 or 2 young people who fall between. In fact, we don't have a young person who falls between the age bracket of below 35, according to the AU. Those are some of the challenges that we have with our political system in Botswana. We have challenges of women and young people standing for elections. We don't have enough. It cut.
Go on. We can't hear you. I think you're breaking. I think we've lost Gigi there in a bit. Ibrahim, let me come to you. She spoke about quite a bit of things. Looking at women participation in politics and participation and representation. What efforts is the Charter? I mean, it's the AU, your Department of Political Affairs. What efforts are you guys putting in place to see that all African countries have a good number of representation and participation of women in the politics the local politics? Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, there are quite a number of initiatives on the continent at the moment, which is working towards ensuring that we have more women play a very active role in the political process across the continent. We had very interesting successes recorded over the last few years. We have already recorded presidents and heads of state in African countries who are women. We, of course, have President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf of Liberia, who is a woman. If you go to Rwanda, we have the highest number of female parliamentarians, not just in Rwanda, but not only in Africa, but of course across the world. Rwanda stands tall in women participation across the continent. But again, we also consider there are quite a number of challenges systematically and structurally that disallows young women and women to also take very active role in the political process. And we have ensured that through the programs that our Women Directorate at the African Union Commission, and also the Office of the Chairperson, the special program on gender that is also focusing on women in political participation, we open up the space by engaging political parties across the continent, on creating spaces for young women and, of course, adult women also to be able to play active role in political process on the continent. One of the programs that we have also started is also to begin to have conversations with young women who are in parliament, or whether they're adult women